So, good morning, everyone. It's an honor to have you here for this special event at the COP29, where we are officially launching the Blue Line program, which connects three seas, the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea, to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss challenges. But to set the stage today, I'm also honored to hand over to Manuel Pulgar Vidal. Manuel is the global practice leader for climate change and energy. And so, Manuel, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome to the Panda Hub today for this A Blue Line for Nature and Climate Action event. Friends, let me start by saying something that for me it is important, and it's about how effective we can be when we know how to navigate in COPs. And why I am bringing that element, because it is amazing how much traction the ocean agenda has gotten. I remember I used to be president of a COP in 2014, in a time in which oceans or seas used not to be part of the agenda. But then I think that the people working on ocean realized how to navigate and how to start to promote traction to a topic, to move it towards negotiators in some time, because that is the way. I am always saying, it is not as simple as to bring and to say a negotiator, talk about this. That is not possible. It is to build one by one, by having these events, by talking with the people of the Marrakesh Partnership, by being part of a thematic priority of the presidency, and with all of that, to build the text, to bring into negotiators, to be included or in a cover decision or in some text. And that is the way in which we get the traction. And I think that ocean has done it well, fantastic. Even food also, food system, now it is part of the agenda. Water, it is some topic that I hope that we can help them also to navigate, because we know how complex the water topic it is. But here we are here because of ocean. So today it is the official launch of the Blue Line program. And let me share with you some reflections about this program, but also its vision. And I will make these remarks organizing ideas around 4 words. The first one, it is this program, it is about to connect. But to connect many, many things. So it is about seas. We are talking about the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea. So a so important area from Europe, Central Europe to the east, in which there are so many, many countries. So also that is something that we are connecting. And it is fantastic. Some days ago, I was also moderating or giving some remarks in a panel that it was about Southern Caucasus countries. So to promote corridors in Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And that is the way in which not only we can achieve our objective, but also promote synergies and promote collaboration. So this Blue Line program, it is about that, to connect those 3 seas, but at the same time to promote that collaboration. But also it is connecting instruments, because when it is about on what to do in these places, it is about of using different kind of instruments to talk about adaptation, to use nature-based solutions, to use the NDC as a mechanism to connect, or the National Adaptation Plan, to promote, because of this collaboration, transboundary collaboration, to promote more effectiveness. Because synergies, it is a beautiful word for sure, but why we are promoting those synergies? It is because we can be more effective, we can be more coherent, and we can save money. We can recognize that in many places of the world, there are not enough resources to have all the capacities to address multiple topics. So by integrating and by promoting synergies, we can promote more effectiveness and even more coherence in our governance. Because I used to be Minister of the Environment of Peru, and I immediately realized how fragmented we are used to be. No, or we are used to being, even now. No, some agencies talking about water, some other about forests, some other about biodiversity, climate in some other hands. So this is the way to connect. It is by bringing all of this cooperation together. Also, what are we connecting? Crisis, unfortunately. For now, crisis, extreme events. We know how vulnerable it is, for example, the Mediterranean, in which we are beating all the records. Some days ago, I read all what it is happening in the Atlantic, in the northern Atlantic Ocean. It is dramatic. So I don't know if it is correct. It is the convection, no, in between the more warm and the cold current, that it is moving things towards a tipping point, a dramatic tipping point, that it could change dramatically the weather in many countries, mostly in Europe. And that is something that we have to consider. We know that still even people, researchers or scientists around oceans, they don't know exactly what is happening. They are still trying to understand. But what it is clear, it is that we are suffering crisis. And look how integrated and systemic are the crises. I am Peruvian. We have La Nina now in Ecuador and Peruvian coast. And that thing that it is happening so far away, it has global effects. Part of the problem with droughts, with problem with floods, and all these dramatic climate extreme events are because of those sea currents effects. Because most of the problem with climate change, it is first that it is systemic, and second that it is extremely connected with sea currents. Sea currents can change dramatically the weather around the world. It is connecting countries. You told me more than 20 countries, no? When it is about these three seas, probably I am running short by saying 20. Let's see how many you are, but it is fantastic. That means also geographies, but also communities, because this program, it is about working with coastal communities. And something that you remember, even in Europe, in the Mediterranean, but probably the same in the Caspian and in the Black, we used in the past to give our back to the oceans or to the seas, no? Now we are recognizing the role of coastal communities to promote, and also because they're understanding on the reality of their places, to promote better and more effective and impactful action. And for sure, this is about policies, science, and communities. It is a connection in between. And fortunately, what it is happening in the climate debate, it is that climate science, it is more close to decision makers. I think that the IPCC has been very instrumental in connecting science or scientific information. Despite how difficult it is sometimes to understand science, it is well connected to policies. And now we are taking decisions based on science. That is the role. Here we have Najma from UNEP CMC, that it is doing those kind of connections that I think it is the way forward. We have to continue working based on science, mostly because we are in time of uncertainty. And when it is about uncertainty, we do need to have the scientists supporting good decisions, the most accurate, at least, decisions to face these big challenges. So, I've already talked about vulnerability. So this program, it is about to recognize that how vulnerable we are. And look, we used to think, okay, two things as kind of anecdote. I remember when I was part of a commission writing short document, the Peruvian vision for Rio 92, a long time ago, no? And I remember that we wrote like 15 pages about the biodiversity, the coming biodiversity convention, because Peru is a biodiverse country, but half of a page of climate, because we used to think, this is a northern problem, no? And that was the way in which we used to think, no? This is a northern, this is a gringo thing, no? Let's have them solving the crisis. But immediately, then we realized that, no, that is not the reality. The reality is it's a global problem, and even worse than probably biodiversity. I am not misvaluing. I am double left for sure. Biodiversity is so important for us. But climate, it is damaging, and it is promoting more vulnerability. And also we used to think that the impact would be mostly for the southern or for the global south. Again, it is not true. It is happening in the north. Some years ago, the floods in between Germany and Belgium, the fires in California, what we have just seen in Valencia, in Spain. So it is happening even in the richest countries of the world. So we have to recognize that vulnerability. And for sure, to protect more, to the more vulnerable people. That is the idea of this kind of program. And let me finish by saying, because I am taking too much time, this is about to implement. Because the idea it is, when this title, it is referring to action, it is to implement on the ground. because we are most of the time planning, what it is fantastic, we don't need to plan. We are strategizing, but we do need to move our actions to the ground. But also in a way that it could be well understood by people. No? Let me finish with this. After this, we will go back home. We will be with our families and with our partners and with our people and with our neighbors and friends. And if we say, Manuel, how it was the COP? Good, we discussed NCQG and NDC. Probably I won't take their attention more than 20 seconds, no? Because they don't care about those titles. No? They care about what they are looking, the evidence, what sometimes they are suffering. So our role, and that is the role also of this program, it is to translate to people. We have to translate, to tell them what exactly we are doing and how much we do need to work together to be more effective in implementing our action. So welcome to this official launch to the Blue Line program. Welcome to the partners, and welcome to you for being here. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Manuel. I know that you have to go. Yeah, thanks a lot. So thank you very much again, Manuel, for the introduction and for framing the Blue Line program so well. So now to bring this vision to life, I'm very excited to also share with you a short video that, on the ambition and the scope of the Blue Line program. So please have a look.
The Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea. Together, they're a haven for millions, brimming with life, culture, and history. But today, these regions are among the most vulnerable on our planet. Floods, fires, record-breaking heat, and rising sea levels. Every day, every season, our coastlines and communities are changing. Our way of life is at risk, and with it, our future. How many other disasters need to happen before we take action? Small talk days are done. We need to start acting. WWF is launching the Blue Line, the first large-scale nature protection and restoration program in 20 vulnerable marine and coastal areas across 3 seas. Through the Blue Line, we will protect seagrass meadows, rebuild fish stocks, and restore coastal dunes and wetlands. Together, we will create natural defenses against climate impacts, boosting biodiversity and capturing carbon and supporting communities. Our goal by 2030: increase biodiversity protection and resilience across 500,000 hectares of vulnerable marine and coastal areas to reduce climate vulnerability and disaster risk for over 1 million people. This is a bold initiative with a target of €100 million. We're calling on partners, donors, and all who believe in the power of nature to join us. Together, we'll set a new global standard for climate action through nature. The future we're fighting for is right here. Our seas, our coastlines, our home, our lives. The Blue Line is where action begins.
So I hope you find the video as inspiring as I did, but the story doesn't stop here. So welcome, Elizabeth. So I'm very excited to introduce our distinguished panel and panelists. They will bring their expertise and experiences on the Blue Line topics, from accelerate climate impacts to solutions, so nature-based solutions. So please join me on stage. Starting from the left, please, Anna Pirani, Senior Scientist for the Mediterranean Center of Climate Change. Hasma Seiri Labidi, Secretary General for Maritime Affairs for the Presidency of Tunisian Government. Welcome, Asma. Naima Mohamed, Head of Nature-Based Solution at UNEP WCMC. Elizabeth Selwood, Senior Program Manager or Environmental Security Unit at UNEP. And last but not least, Mijn Kan, a Climate Advisor of Netherlands. Maybe, Mijn, I can call you a panda marathoner because you are, giving an incredible value to all these side events. So each panel, you just say the rules. Each panel will have 5-6 minutes. So we want to have also time to allow the public to have some questions. So we can start with Anna. So Anna, based on your research at the Mediterranean Center for Climate Change, what are the most urgent climate risks? Sorry. Climate risks and hazard for the Mediterranean, Black Sea, and the Caspian Sea, and then how we can prioritize action to address these risks.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. CMCC is an interdisciplinary research institute in Italy, and we look forward to this opportunity for collaboration. So I'm coming actually from the negotiations, and it was interesting to see Manuel talk about the more boring topics being discussed in the negotiations. But we have an item on research and systematic observations, and I think the conclusions are very important to highlight. We've expressed, as parties, utmost concern about the state of the global climate system. So we have record high greenhouse gas concentrations observed, and 2024 is on track to be the hottest on record. Also, this decade will be on track to be the hottest on record. And we have agreed, we all agree that this is the result of a long-term warming trend caused by emissions since pre-industrial times. And the decision also highlights changes in the climate system, both slow onset and extreme events. So we heard very clearly the dramatic conditions we're experiencing in the climate. So where is the heat? And the oceans is taking up the majority of this heat that we're causing to the climate system. And so we're experiencing novel conditions never experienced before in millennia. And what does this mean for the Mediterranean and for what we need to work on? It means that the risks that we're facing are increasing with every increment of the warming that we see both around the world, but also in the ocean and on the sea and coasts. So as the temperatures rise, the risks become more complex and difficult to manage. And we are talking here about reducing emissions, limiting warming. We look at the key risks that we have assessed in the Mediterranean, for example, and if we limit warming, we do limit the risks, but we don't eliminate them. So there will continue to be impacts, important impacts, and losses and damages. So from our research, we see that the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, and the Caspian are facing multifaceted, complex risks, and this is where we have to work together. So, for example, extreme weather events, sea level rise, marine biodiversity loss, and also economic vulnerabilities. So how can we prioritize actions? And I wanted just to share some of the topics we are working on actively in our research projects, and our projects are very applied in nature, so it speaks to this desire to work with communities and build resilience. So we're looking at projects that develop optimal planning and implementation of nature-based solutions, building community resilience, and enhancing predictive capacities. So we think, I won't go into the details of the projects to save time, I'm happy to talk about them as we come back. But for example, one project, the Coast Predict project, I want to highlight. So we develop, we co-design and implement an integrated coastal ocean observing system and predicting system. And so we think that we can work together to develop a framework that can be implemented actually locally. So just to re-emphasize that we think that prioritized actions through the Blue Line initiative, it's a way to coordinate together and share experiences and learning that we work predominantly in the Mediterranean region at this point. We thought we can really support this initiative, for example, through the analytical strength of Coast Predict, and we can prioritize and amplify the impact of our research so that we build resilience across this zone, these communities and countries to build a defense line against climate change. And so again, we're very happy to the opportunity to collaborate, and I look forward to hearing from my colleagues on the panel more about the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And now, Asma. So I will start in English, and I'll translate in French, and then you can go in French, and we'll do the translation thanks to our colleague Mehdi. So can you share with us how climate change is impacting Tunisian coast, and if Blue Line can provide some solution to that? So, vous pouvez partager avec nous, c'est clair. Okay, please.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be with you and to share with you Tunisian experience. So allow me to switch in French. En fait, la Tunisie est confrontée à des impacts climatiques plus rapides que la moyenne. Donc, nous vivons des problèmes au niveau de notre littoral et de nos mers liés à l'élévation du niveau de la mer, dû au réchauffement climatique. On n'est pas les seuls à vivre cette situation. Nous sommes dans un bassin méditerranéen qui est exposé beaucoup plus que d'autres. Ah, OK. Ah, I will translate. OK.
Okay, I will do my best to translate what she already said. Okay, she said that Tunisia is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, facing the rising of sea level. You talk about acidification of groundwater and with impact on agriculture. And this is not the exclusive case of Tunisia, but it's a global, at global scale, at regional scale.
Alors, juste pour donner quelques chiffres, et mon intention en réalité c'est de choquer. Permettez-moi de vous choquer par rapport aux chiffres. Alors, nous avons, selon les prévisions scientifiques, on s'attend à une élévation du niveau de la mer de 0,5 mètres d'ici 2050 à 1, voire même 3 mètres d'ici 2100. Jusqu'à la fin du siècle. Et quand on parle de ces chiffres, on parle de 150 kilomètres de littoral qui vont être submergés par la mer d'ici 2050 et 1000 kilomètres de littoral qui seront submergés d'ici 2100.
Okay, I will give you some numbers. It's shocking numbers that we present in order to understand the impact of climate change. We are talking about sea level rising by half a meter from now until 2050, and from 1 to 3 meters by 2100. And we are talking about 150 kilometers of littoral of Tunisia that will be impacted by this rising of sea level from now to 2030, and talking about 2,000 kilometers to 2100.
It's 250 until 1050 and 1,000 kilometers by 2100. Alors, ce problème d'élévation du niveau de la mer a donné lieu à un problème d'acidification des terres agricoles et d'accès à l'eau potable pour les communautés littorales, à un problème au niveau des infrastructures côtières, un problème au niveau de la biodiversité marine et à la stabilité des habitats. Et ce sont des problèmes aggravés aussi par les phénomènes météorologiques extrêmes comme les tempêtes. Dans la Méditerranée, on n'est pas épargné de voir la même situation que Derna a vécu en Libye ou bien Valence a vécu en Espagne.
Okay, we are talking about acidification of lands with an impact of the water for agriculture, and this is impacting as well the marine biodiversity and the stability of the coastal habitats, and an impact on communities on that. So this phenomenon will be intensified with the extreme weather conditions like the storms, the flooding, like the cases of Derna in Libya and recently in Valencia in Spain.
Alors, à ces problèmes-là, bien sûr, s'ajoutent les effets liés à l'impact de l'activité humaine, notamment la pollution et la surexploitation du milieu marin. Face à cette situation, justement, j'aimerais parler de la politique de la Tunisie. C'est une politique qui est basée sur plusieurs actions. Tout d'abord, des stratégies multisectorielles qui visent la transition écologique au niveau côtier et marin, mais aussi l'implication de tous les partenaires, communautés locales, société civile, les jeunes aussi. Nous avons mis en place une politique de promotion de l'économie bleue pour assurer une pêche durable, un transport durable, un tourisme durable. Et quatrième pilier, c'est la promotion de la recherche scientifique. Nous avons des institutions pionnières dans ce domaine-là, telles que l'Institut national des sciences et technologies de la mer, les laboratoires au niveau des facultés qui font des études et là sur l'observation et la veille et développent des solutions innovantes, surtout des solutions basées sur la nature.
The impact of climate change is as well on the human activities, and we are living the over-exploitation of resources of sea. So the political or the strategy of the government of Tunisia is based on strategic multi-sectorial strategy that involve all stakeholders, from the government to local stakeholders, to the civil society, the involvement of youth and women in the process, and we are developing a blue economy based on the sustainability of many activities or many sectors involving the scientific research and the local and coastal communities, and mainly based on the NFS based solution. Nature-based solution.
Yeah. Alors, il y a aussi le volet coopération qui est très important dans le cadre de la politique tunisienne. Et dans ce cadre-là, j'aimerais parler de quelques expériences avec WWF, puisque je suis l'invité de ce side event. Alors, plusieurs expériences ont été montées en coopération avec WWF. Et j'aimerais parler de deux projets phares, si vous permettez. Le projet il concerne l'amélioration de l'herbier marin au niveau du golfe de Gabès, une zone très exploitée et qui subit une pression de pollution. Et grâce à ce projet, il y a eu une population de 600 pêcheurs côtiers qui se sont mis d'accord pour instaurer volontairement une zone de repos, une zone d'interdiction de pêche qui a permis le repeuplement des espèces marines, qui a permis aussi la restauration de l'herbier marin. Et c'était vraiment une expérience pilote et c'était réellement volontaire de la part des pêcheurs. C'est un projet qui a débuté il y a 3 ans et il a permis de créer une initiative locale qui a bien réussi. Deuxième projet, c'est un projet de développement du pescatourisme à la région de Tabarka et qui a permis de créer donc une activité de pêche qui associe les touristes pour voir donc l'activité des pêcheurs, une activité durable, mais aussi de sensibiliser par rapport à la nécessité de préserver le milieu marin, de préserver les espèces marines. Et c'est un projet, l'importance de ce projet, c'est qu'il a permis aussi à ces pêcheurs d'avoir un revenu dans les périodes de baisse de production et de revenus. Et ça nous a permis au niveau de l'administration de développer un cadre réglementaire pour organiser et instaurer le pescatourisme en Tunisie.
I will present two case studies, two projects developed in Tunisia in close cooperation with WWF. She's invited by WWF to this talk. So the first project is dedicated to the improvement of conservation status of Posidonia meadows in the Gulf of Gabes. Gulf of Gabes is located in southern part of Tunisia. It's an important area for biodiversity, and we will talk about an initiative coming from local fishers in that area, 600 coastal fishers or small-scale fishers, agreed to create on a voluntary basis a closed area, or it's a kind of a restricted area for fisheries for a certain period, for temporarily, and in order to reduce the activities in that area, in order to restore the Posidonia meadows, and this is a pilot activity that was started since 3 years, involving these coastal communities of fishers, and the results are showed in the improvement of the biodiversity in that area. So this second project will be in the northern part of Tunisia. It will be about development of pescaturismo in Tabarka, and these activities involving coastal fishers, small-scale fishers in that area, and the involvement of tourists. This project led to the development of a strategical framework for the development of pescatourisme in Tunisia.
Alors, je saisis cette occasion pour lancer probablement dans le cadre du programme Blue Line un appel pour travailler ensemble sur la Posidonie en Tunisie. La Posidonie en Tunisie, dans les océans, ça représente le poumon de la mer pour absorber le CO2. 40% de la Posidonie au niveau de la Méditerranée se trouve dans les côtes tunisiennes, et ça représente un trésor important pour la Tunisie, mais aussi pour toute l'humanité. Et ce trésor, malheureusement, subit quelques pressions liées à la pollution, liées à la surexploitation de l'espace marin. Et mon souhait, c'est de travailler ensemble sur ce trésor en créant ce qu'on appelle une ceinture bleue qui permet tout d'abord donc à la Tunisie de restaurer cette plante, mais aussi d'avoir une capacité d'absorption du CO2 au niveau de la Méditerranée. Donc ça confirme notre effort au niveau tunisien de continuer à travailler sur des solutions basées sur la nature, mais aussi ça confirme notre appel à un travail multinational, multirégional avec nos partenaires sur ces questions prioritaires pour la Tunisie.
Okay, so we are supporting the program Blue Line, or the project Blue Line, and here we are launching a call to work together in Tunisia in order to improve the conservation status of Posidonia meadows, as they are a sink for CO2. 40% of Posidonia meadows in the Mediterranean are located in Tunisia. It's a treasure that is facing some pressures like pollution, overexploitation of some activities, and here we are announcing the launch of a Tunisian initiative, the Blue Belt, which looks for the restoration of these Posidonia meadows in order to improve the absorption of the sink of CO2, and we are confirming we are improving, or we are supporting the effort at regional level with our partners, and mainly using the nature-based solution and the local capacities.
Thank you very much, Asma and Mehdi, and Mehdi for this effort of translating simultaneously, please. So, Najima, so let's focus on NBS. So NBS require integration into policies to achieve systemic change. So what are the key barriers that you see for integrating NBS into regional and national frameworks, and how can Blue Line, overcome these barriers?
Thank you so much, Alessio. I think this COP has been fantastic, really, to see the climate and nature agendas join in the way we think and how we are hearing people are experiencing challenges. It's really wonderful to go through really good examples from real places in the world, because people don't experience climate and nature crises separately. They experience them together. and particularly climate vulnerable regions like small island developing states, coastal communities, it's jobs and livelihoods, it's food and water that's being affected. So I think we now need to make the vision and the thinking, the integrated thinking, we need to make it a reality into the way we plan, into the way we invest. And a program like this actually represents, a real opportunity to feed into, more ambitious nationally determined contributions that have a strong adaptation component and national biodiversity strategies and action plans that are complemented, by the local actions. And so I do think that an initiative like this, which I will commend also for being very people-centered, you have the ambition of reaching 1 million, communities. These are people that are living in some of the most vulnerable places in the world. So I think the complementarity in the vision of the program, I was very happy. I don't know, as a head of nature-based solutions, if I can add much more to what the Secretary General has said, because she explained in a very concrete way why her government is going to look at nature-based solutions. We have an integrated poly-crisis, so we need to find solutions that are integrated, solutions that can address the development needs of those really vulnerable communities, that can deliver socioeconomic well-being, that can be transformative and just, that understand that within those communities, not everyone has got an equal say, not everyone is equally able to articulate their concerns. So I think, the vision of the program of having a strong community empowerment component, I think is particularly strong. So I come from an organization, UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Center, and we are supporting both at the policy and the practice level a lot of ecosystem-based adaptation, and we work in partnership with WWF in some of those. And just to share an example from Madagascar, where we are working both on land-based and coastal-based adaptation initiatives, because the two are connected. So I do think, the experience that we have there is you have the national visions, which are really important. They set the targets, they set the trends, but what makes up those nationally determined commitments from countries? It's the local action. And I think it's been incredibly important for us, a lesson, as we support our local partners to set in tracking systems to understand the real benefits, the social and the ecological and the climate benefits that are coming out of nature-based solutions, to actually develop locally level monitoring and evaluation and learning systems. What I'm really excited about the program is this is a cross-country learning, to build diplomacy, to build understanding between the communities, the countries that share that incredible seascape, the Mediterranean, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea. There are communities and countries, that share that. So it's an exciting program. I think, you don't have nature-based solutions in the title, but it's a nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based adaptation program, in my view. And I think when you have a community-centered approach to deliver, I think it becomes real. It will be sustainable, because you will have local buy-in and contribution to decide on the right actions in the right places, because the local people understand that ecosystems, the national scientists understand the ecosystems best. I think it will be more sustainable, it will be more enduring, it will speak to local priorities, and I hope that a program like this, being championed by a conservation organization, will meet development organizations. I've been amazed the language that we so comfortably use as conservation and environmental organizations. I moderated a panel of development banks, and they were speaking about natural capital accounting and ecosystem services, and I thought, I'd better learn their language better the next time I come, because they know my language, and they are using it, and they are designing, planning, and investing in a much more integrated way. Because I think, as Manuel opened, it's a crisis that's bringing us together, and it's a crisis that we can't address, separately. And I think as UNEP WCMC, we look forward to working with the partners that are working on this initiative. It's exciting, it's bold, it's big, and it's exactly the kind of thing that we need to do a lot more of. Thank you, Alessio.
Thank you very much, Najima, for your kind words. Elizabeth, so scaling climate adaptation is essential. How does the Blue Line, in your opinion, align with UNEP broader adaptation strategies, and what opportunities you see for transboundary collaboration?
Thank you, Alessio, and thank you, WWF, for bringing us together for this really interesting discussion. I think one thing to point out is that large scale is essential. There's a lot of really great work in all of these regions, but sometimes we find it's fragmented, and also there are some gaps. So I think scaling up, also as we see the climate emergency intensifying, is super important. In terms of the complementarity with what UNEP can provide and offer, I think maybe 3 points I want to make. One is that we need cooperation across these regions at different levels. And one of the areas where the UN Environment Programme can support this is through the work we're doing at the intergovernmental level. In the Mediterranean region, we have the Barcelona Convention, which is a treaty for the protection of the Mediterranean Sea and coastal areas. We are also serve as the interim secretariat for the Tehran Convention, which is for the protection of the Caspian Sea. And we're involved also in the Black Sea through the Black Sea Commission. These are important mechanisms for bringing science and bringing solutions, including and especially nature-based solutions, to policymakers at the most senior levels. The MEAs for these regions convene ministers. They have their own COPs, so I think relevant to mention here. I think everybody can recognize the importance of bringing ministers together to talk about these shared priorities. And so we have, through these mechanisms, a vehicle for bringing solutions, including from our fantastic partners at WCMC, and from across the board to the highest level of decision making, but also to convene through different processes. A lot of science to policy potential there. A second point, I think, where we can potentially add is also a convening role that the United Nations can sometimes play. And we need partners for this. We need inputs, we need partners, we need best practices. Couple of examples I want to bring. One is that we've been convening adaptation planners from countries in the Eastern Mediterranean to share their experiences of adaptation, to share nature-based solutions, to share different types of solutions to the climate risks they're facing. Incredible appetite, I think, we're finding from planners from these countries to work with each other, and an incredible thirst for solutions. So this is another way that we can bring science, bring best practices to policymakers. We're also doing some work on Mediterranean forests, where I can really see the interest from our governmental partners in identifying solutions that are working. So I think the convening is that we do sometimes, always with partners, is highly relevant here. And I think the third point is about the continuous monitoring of changes and understanding what's working. And this is where we also need to draw on these ambitious programs. Climate change is happening in these regions very fast, and we can see that it's accelerating. The impacts have been noted by the other panelists. One of the things that UNEP tries to do is to draw a scientific baseline, and then monitor through science the changes that are happening, and also we need that to try and monitor what's working, so that we can convince decision makers, public sector investments, development banks, and the private sector to scale up what we know is working. There are some very solid, comprehensive processes and mechanisms for monitoring scientifically the changes that are happening in the region. The State of the Environment and Development in the Mediterranean, MEDEC, the consortium of scientists on climate change in the Mediterranean. UNEP has just published a Caspian Sea working paper looking at the impact of climate change on the Caspian. So we're continuously trying to pull together the science, and that helps us to monitor change. But we need inputs as well from the field, from different partners, in terms of making sure that we understand what's happening in the region, and also carefully monitoring what's working so we can push to scale up. And I finally want to note the importance of ecosystem-based approaches and the connections, which I think you well appreciate, of terrestrial and marine ecosystems, the source to sea, the way that freshwater ecosystems, terrestrial ecosystems affect the marine environment, and vice versa. We're really conscious of those, so very glad to see this is reflected in the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Mine. So, can you share with us some example of, let's say, successful or ongoing marine and coastal nature-based solutions, and which lesson we can take from these projects?
Thank you, Alessio, and good morning, everyone. Indeed, thanks for giving me that title about marathon events. But the good thing is that I've been talking about nature-based solutions, which help me to recycle my notes and therefore be sustainable as well. So thank you for inviting me, Alessio, on this fantastic panel. And I wanted to start with the nature-based solutions programs that WWF is engaged with currently in many countries and through their country offices around the world. It is ongoing because, of course, the results and the impact of these programs we will see in the future, which is the good thing about nature-based solution programs, but also something that often creates obstacles, for example, for investment purposes. However, even though the impact is not immediate, we should remember that it's about journey and not the destination. And one of the things about nature-based solutions for whether it's climate adaptation, climate mitigation, or co-benefits for both and biodiversity, if designed and planned as per the criteria, making sure that it includes risks and assessments of risk and assessments of climate impacts to people as well as ecosystems, taking the context into account, of course, because it will differ from area to area, it has the potential to be sustainable in terms of longevity. That is the whole purpose and the successful notion of nature-based solutions. One of the things that WWF really works hard when it comes to nature-based solution programs, which has been also mentioned by my colleagues on this panel, is the very important factor of including communities and people. And why is that important? Not only because to understand context and the lived experiences of these people in those areas, but the sustainability and the monitoring of these programs. Next generations will have to take up the mantle of responsibility to ensure that these programs are sustained, they are maintained, and they will also monitor in addition to AI and technological tools. And also this creates job opportunities. Therefore, it is very, very critical to include people and ecosystem knowledge. Later today, I also have a panel on youth in nature-based solutions, also very important just because of what I mentioned right now. So WWF just published a report called Watering Resilience, and it talks about 15 case studies in 15 different WWF locations where it is currently conducting nature-based solutions programs in the water sector, which of course has multiple sectoral benefits. I don't want to go into details. I know time is of the essence, but there are two case studies that I thought I could bring. One is actually in Madagascar, and this is about mangroves. I think we all know by now the climate heroes that mangroves are because of the multiple benefits that it provides to communities in terms of livelihood benefits and food security, water security, but also it is one of the species of mangroves also contributes to carbon sequestration. It is estimated and reported that 4 times more carbon is absorbed by mangroves than its tropical forest counterparts. So in Madagascar, WWF has been working with communities around Ambaro Bay since 2016 to restore and sustainably manage their mangroves, and it's supporting 55 community-based natural resource management groups covering approximately 86,000 hectares. And I know those numbers none of us are going to remember, but I wanted to mention that because one of the things, I'm also involved in the negotiations and I follow the negotiations. One of the biggest challenges of adaptation is, okay, how are we monitoring? How are we understanding that when we invest in an adaptation program, for example, nature-based solutions for adaptation, how do we understand what is coming in return? And therefore setting these numbers, how many hectares, kilometers, how many people, through livelihoods and food security, water security, are we impacting through these adaptation programs? So that is also something that WWF really focuses on in terms of coming up with very concrete numbers for adaptation benefits. The other case study is in Vietnam, in the Mekong Delta. And here the upper section of delta used to benefit from natural flooding in the wet season and the water sediments and nutrients it would bring. However, over recent decades, there have been development of hydropower, reservoirs upstream, and unsustainable sand mining as well, leading to ecosystem degradation. There has also been development of around 20,000 kilometers of dikes in that region. However, we now know, and we have known for a while actually, that floodplains need seasonal flooding to stay healthy and to provide the ecosystem services that they do. So WWF Vietnam is implementing NBS solutions in 3 different wetland sites in the area, and it's paving towards a more sustainable future for people of the upper delta and the biodiversity in the process. For example, flood-based agriculture, so flood-resilient crops, for example, installing culverts and sluice gates, and so on and so forth. When these programs are implemented, there are some drawbacks. For example, certain livelihoods will also be challenged, which has been a good thing as well because of these more grey infrastructure development. However, as these nature-based solutions come into effect, they will also provide alternative livelihoods which are more sustainable in the future. And that is also something that the offices there continuously engage with the communities who reside in those areas. So I want to finish off with one thing that Manuel so rightfully said about navigating through the COPs. I've been involved in the COPs for a few years now, mostly remotely, and in the last few years I've been coming in person. And one of the things is that indeed certain topics gain traction with efforts, with collective efforts, when organizations come together, when partnerships are built. Another panel that I was on was also on WWF partnerships with the European Investment Bank, which is called NatureWise. Another one is with the IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, which looks at nature-based solutions for adaptation and disaster risk reduction. And when we are pushing for these agenda, it also is reflected in the decision text of the COPs, for example, nature-based solutions and ecosystem adaptation, and then they get translated into the national instruments such as national determined contributions and national adaptation plans and the NBSAPs, the biodiversity plans, and then they pave the way for such programs to be developed and pitched in different countries and therefore contributing to the global goal. I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Main, and thank you very much for all the panelists for this amazing contribution. But now, before we close, I'd like to open the floor and so to a question from the audience. Ante, I know that you have a question for us.
Hello. First of all, thanks very much for all the rich information. Appreciate all of you and all the perspective you've shared. A very quick question is, what's the appetite for UNEP, WWF, other organizations to take the next step towards influencing policy? Because there's no question of what you all do and what you contribute to. In fact, if you ask me, I've been a conservationist as a hobby for large carnivora, in addition to be a technology leader. So I know the value that NBS gives. When I talk to MDBs, when I talk to guys at the World Bank, there's a language that they talk they just don't know the solutions in their pocket, which is NBS. We just have to mainstream it. So are we ready to take it to the next step and create a narrative to flash to all the MDBs, do modeling, to show impacts, what it can do? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. That's a very good question. And I would say that we have started on that process. For example, the kind of programs, including the Blue Line, which is being launched here today, these programs are in action, and we are sitting with MDBs, with multilateral development banks, but also private banks. WWF has a very strong finance practice who is working on greening the finance and financing the green, talking to private sector actors in the benefits of nature-based solutions. And action has started because we are also a very strong, we are very strong on policy as well, policies, advocacy. From WWF, we have a very strong team, as you know, and we are, for example, I work on adaptation. I have colleagues who work on Article 6, another works on mitigation work program, NCQG. So what we do is that we are always trying to take these action and solutions to the delegations, to the policymakers in the parliament. So it's really a holistic approach, and we can no longer afford to just do one thing. For example, programs on the ground. We have to sit with the private sector, we have to sit with the public sector, and also catalyze action on the ground. The only thing is that NBS takes time to show impact, and so we have to be patient, but I believe the wheel is turning.
I think probably just to add to what was said, I mean, I think as organizations that work on the science and the evidence, we try to influence policy at multiple levels, and often we're not the ones, being able to directly, but we rely on our partners. We work with governments, we work with civil society organizations, and increasingly now with the private sector. And it's been incredible to see, for example, in the private sector, a lot of voluntary action on reporting and integrating nature into how they structure their investments. And I think, increasingly we're beginning to see that the policy champions are the practitioners, who are beginning to implement, who are building the evidence over time, that nature-based solutions can work. And we produce, as I said, my most sobering day at COP29 has been the day when UNEP, I guess, soft launch or second launch the emissions and adaptation gap reports. Because that's the evidence, that policymakers need to do in the same way. UNEP WCMC, we produce Protected Planet, reports. So we try to produce the evidence and also support our partners to be able to make those policy asks at multiple levels.
Je vais répondre à la question, mais du côté gouvernemental, pas du côté des partenaires régionaux et internationaux. En fait, au niveau tunisien, par exemple, pour créer une certaine synergie entre les différentes initiatives que nous recevons de la part de nos partenaires, nous avons mis en place une politique qui repose sur 3 principes. Le premier, c'est de créer une synergie entre les différents partenaires pour que les différentes actions correspondent aux priorités tunisiennes et permettent de répondre à nos engagements au niveau international. Deuxième principe, c'est que en nous donnant la priorité aux solutions d'adaptation beaucoup plus que l'atténuation, puisqu'au niveau de l'atténuation, nous avons bien avancé sur ces aspects-là. Troisième principe, c'est que nous cherchons à mettre en place en fait une synergie au niveau national pour que le cadre réglementaire et institutionnel soit à la hauteur aussi de nos engagements au niveau international, et ça nous permet de répondre à nos obligations, mais aussi pour pouvoir faire face aux différents problèmes, pressions auxquels nous sommes confrontés. Donc vous voyez, en fait, à cette question, on peut répondre des différents côtés. Moi, j'ai essayé de répondre du côté gouvernemental, comment on a pu répondre à ce souci de créer des synergies et penser à l'étape prochaine. Voilà.
Yeah, Unfortunately, we are out of time. Yeah, we finished. So we really have to close. I will translate for you after the meeting. So thanks a lot, everybody, for coming today, and especially to our fantastic panelists. See you soon.
Thank you.
And stay tuned.